The doctor's voice cut through the silence, cold and final. "She has 1 hour left." The billionaire froze, staring at his mother's fragile body like time itself had just betrayed him. He had built empires, crushed competitors, controlled markets. But in that moment, standing in the hospital, he realized he couldn't buy even a single second more for her life. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. The machines beeped slowly, each sound echoing like a countdown to something irreversible, while the maid stood quietly in the corner, her eyes fixed on the old woman's face. No one noticed her trembling hands, no one cared about her silent tears, because to them she was just a poor worker, invisible in a room filled with wealth and fear. Suddenly, the billionaire's phone rang. His board demanded an urgent decision worth millions, but for the first time he rejected it, throwing the phone aside in anger. "I gave everything to the world and got nothing in return," he whispered, gripping his mother's hand, regret flooding in like a storm he could no longer control. The maid stepped forward slowly, her voice shaking. "Sir, may I try something?" The room fell silent, and the doctor looked at her with disbelief and quiet irritation. "Try what?" the billionaire snapped, his patience gone, his heart breaking, his mind refusing to believe that someone like her could change anything now. But the maid's eyes held something strange, not fear, not hope, something deeper, something that made the billionaire pause, like she knew something no one else did. The doctor scoffed quietly, shaking his head. "This is not the time for experiments." But the maid didn't step back, her eyes still locked on the dying woman as if she was waiting for something unseen. The billionaire hesitated for a moment, then spoke sharply. "You have 5 minutes. If this is nonsense, you're out of here forever." His voice was cold, but inside he was desperate for any miracle. The maid moved closer to the bed, gently holding the old woman's hand, her touch soft yet firm, like she wasn't afraid of death standing right in front of her. She leaned in and whispered something into the old woman's ear, words so low that no one else in the room could hear them, but the effect was immediate and shocking. The heart monitor suddenly spiked for a second, then steadied. The doctor rushed forward, confused, adjusting machines, thinking it was just a technical glitch or false signal. "What did you say?" the billionaire demanded, stepping closer, his eyes filled with suspicion, fear, and a strange flicker of hope he didn't want to believe. The maid didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him, her eyes filled with pain. "Sir, there are truths your mother has been waiting to hear for years." Before he could respond, the maid asked something unexpected. "Do you remember the night she was left alone on the road, years ago?" The billionaire's face went pale instantly. His mind raced back to that night he had buried deep inside, a decision he never spoke about, a mistake he convinced himself was necessary for his rise to power. And just like that, the room didn't feel like a hospital anymore. It felt like a courtroom where the past had returned to deliver its final judgment. The billionaire staggered back, his breath uneven, as memories he had buried for years clawed their way back, refusing to stay hidden any longer in the darkness of his past. "That night," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I had no choice." But even as he said it, the lie felt weak, like it could collapse under the weight of truth at any second. The maid stepped closer, her eyes sharp now. "No, sir. You had a choice. You just chose power over the woman who gave you everything." Her words hit harder than any accusation ever could. The machines beeped louder for a moment, as if the old woman's fading life was reacting to the truth finally being spoken out loud after years of silence and suppressed guilt. The doctor tried to interrupt, insisting they step outside, but the billionaire raised his hand, stopping him. For once, money and authority meant nothing in this moment of truth. "What do you know about that night?" he asked, his voice trembling, his eyes locked onto the maid as if she held the key to something far bigger than he expected. The maid took a deep breath, her hand still holding the old woman's fragile fingers. "I know because I was there." The room froze, the air turning heavy with shock. The billionaire's eyes widened, confusion and fear crashing together. "That's impossible! There was no one else there!" His heart pounded as reality began to shift beneath him. Tears rolled down the maid's face as she nodded slowly. "You didn't see me because you never looked back." Her voice carried a pain that had lived silently for years. And in that moment, the past was no longer a memory. It was alive, standing in front of him, ready to expose every truth he had tried to erase forever. The billionaire's legs felt weak as he grabbed the edge of the hospital bed, his mind spinning, trying to deny what he just heard, but deep down he knew something was terribly wrong. "I left her, but she was alive," he muttered, his voice shaking, as flashes of that dark roadside returned, rain, silence, and his mother's weak voice calling his name. The maid nodded slowly, tears falling without control. "Yes, she was alive, and she kept calling for you, again and again, until her voice broke into silence." The room turned unbearably heavy, the sound of machines mixing with his racing heartbeat as guilt wrapped around him like chains he could no longer escape from. "I went back the next morning," he said quickly, almost defensively. "She wasn't there. I thought someone helped her." His words sounded hollow even to himself. The maid closed her eyes for a second, then whispered, "Someone did, but not the way you think." Her grip tightened around the old woman's hand as if protecting her even now. "I found her on the side of the road, barely breathing, soaked in rain, abandoned like she meant nothing," the maid continued, her voice filled with pain and quiet anger. The billionaire's face turned pale, his body frozen, unable to process the truth unfolding in front of him, each word cutting deeper than the last. "I stayed with her all night," the maid said softly, "while you were building deals, signing contracts, and forgetting the woman who gave you life." And just then, the heart monitor let out a strange, uneven sound, not fading, not stopping, but changing, as if something impossible was about to begin. The doctor rushed to the monitor, confusion written all over his face. "This doesn't make sense. Her vitals were collapsing, but now they're stabilizing," he said, checking the readings again. The billionaire stepped closer, his heart pounding. Is she getting better?" His voice carried a fragile hope, the kind he had never allowed himself to feel before. The maid didn't look at the machines. Her eyes stayed on the old woman. "She's not responding to medicine. She's responding to something else," she whispered, her tone calm but powerful. "What are you talking about?" the doctor snapped, clearly irritated, unable to accept anything beyond science and logic inside his controlled environment. The maid slowly wiped her tears and said, "She has been waiting, not for treatment, but for truth, for closure that was stolen from her that night." The billionaire felt his chest tighten, every word hitting him like a hammer. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice no longer arrogant, but broken and desperate. For the first time, the maid looked directly into his eyes without fear. "Say what you never said. Admit what you never accepted, before it's too late." His lips trembled as he turned toward his mother, the woman he had once left behind, now lying helpless in front of him, her life hanging by a thread. I was ashamed," he finally whispered, tears forming. "You were sick, weak, and I thought you would destroy everything I built." The truth came out, raw and painful, and suddenly the monitor beeped faster again, not in panic, but in response, as if the old woman's soul was still listening, waiting for something more. The room fell silent as his confession hung in the air, heavy and unforgiving, while the machines echoed every second like they were measuring not time, but truth itself. Tears streamed down his face as he dropped to his knees beside the bed. "I chose money over you. I chose my image over your life," he cried, his voice breaking completely. The doctor stepped back, stunned, watching something he couldn't explain as the old woman's fingers twitched slightly inside the maid's gentle grip. "She can hear you," the maid whispered softly, her voice filled with certainty. "Don't stop now. She waited years for this moment. Don't let fear silence you again." The billionaire pressed his forehead against his mother's hand, his entire world collapsing. "I was wrong. I was cruel, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." The heart monitor responded again, its rhythm shifting, stronger now, as if each word was pulling her back from the edge she had been slipping into moments ago. "I left you in the rain, alone, calling my name," he continued, shaking, "and I lived every day pretending it never happened." The maid closed her eyes, tears falling, but there was something else in her expression now, relief, as if a burden she carried for years was finally being released. "Tell her the one thing you never did," she urged quietly, her voice guiding him toward the final truth he had avoided his entire life. And with trembling lips, broken pride, and nothing left to hide, he finally whispered the words that could change everything, or end it forever. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry," he finally said, his voice collapsing under the weight of years of guilt as tears fell uncontrollably onto her fragile, motionless hand. For a second, nothing happened. The room stayed still, the machine steady, the doctor silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for a response. Then, suddenly, the old woman's fingers moved, slightly, but clearly. The billionaire froze, his eyes wide, unable to believe what he just felt in his trembling hands. "Doctor, did you see that?" he shouted, hope and fear crashing together, while the monitor's rhythm grew stronger, louder, almost fighting against death itself. The doctor rushed forward, checking her pulse again, his face filled with disbelief. This is not possible," he murmured, unable to explain what was happening. The maid stepped back quietly, watching everything unfold, but her face wasn't surprised. It was calm, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment all along, slowly, painfully. The old woman's eyes began to open, weak, tired, but alive. Her lips trembled as she tried to form words that had been trapped for years. "My son," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but strong enough to shatter every wall he had built around his heart over the years. He broke down completely, holding her hand tightly. "I'm here. I'm here. I'm not leaving you again," he cried, his entire identity crumbling into something human at last. But just as the moment turned hopeful, the maid quietly turned toward the door, her eyes filled with something deeper, like her role in this story was almost over. "Wait! Don't go!" the billionaire called out, his voice urgent, as he noticed the maid quietly reaching for the door, like she was about to disappear from their lives forever. She paused for a moment, her back still turned. "My work here is done, sir," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange peace that didn't match the storm she had just calmed. The billionaire stood up quickly, confusion written all over his face. "No, you don't understand. You saved her. You saved my mother. I owe you everything." The maid slowly turned around, her eyes filled with emotion. "No, sir. I didn't save her. You did, the moment you chose truth over pride." The old woman, still weak but conscious, slightly raised her hand toward the maid, her eyes filled with recognition, as if she knew her far beyond this moment. "You stayed with me," she whispered faintly, her voice fragile but clear enough to carry meaning that shocked the billionaire to his core. The maid stepped closer, gently holding her hand one last time. "I promised you that night I wouldn't leave you alone the way he did," she said, tears falling silently. The billionaire's heart dropped, realization hitting him like lightning. You were the one all these years?" His voice trembled as truth fully revealed itself. She nodded slowly. "I had nothing, but I stayed. Not for money, not for reward, but because no mother deserves to be abandoned like that." And as silence filled the room once again, the billionaire realized the impossible wasn't just saving a life. It was being given a second chance to become human again. The story ends here, but the mystery lives on. Like, subscribe, and return for the next unforgettable journey.